sees energy as the riding wave. And in fact, it's the confluence of energies of different kinds, different hues, different things, which makes things move, things work in the universe, in the world, in our lives, in you, me, everybody, this microphone, this video session, everything is different facets of the same energy or different facets of energy. Let's just put it at that. So given the fact that there are so many facets operating together, integrating that, you had a new evolution through the world of cymatics. And cymatics is really bringing about significant knowledge to which was heretofore not known to people, which includes the knowledge of waves and frequencies operating through different media, different structures, solid, liquid. In fact, the fact that there is a new layer of energy, okay, as opposed to the three states which we knew about in school, solid, liquid, gas. Now it's accepted that plasma is another state. So similarly, ether or akasha has got incorporated. So from saying that there's nothing beyond a certain kilometer, certain height after Earth, now there's so much of energy there also in different formats again. Okay, so that knowledge has become very, very profound today. Now, if we take that knowledge ahead, how are we going to work our lives? And how do we see that in the context of what a child is, what a child needs, what a child learns, what a child accepts from parents as also from other caregivers, educators, and how do these transactions happen? And especially, we are dealing in the context of a child today simply because that seems to be the most profound period. But let me assure you, children of all ages, which includes preconception, babies in the womb, babies just born, 2 to 6 years, up to teenage, beyond teenage, adulthood, right up to the end of life is what this knowledge serves good for. That said, we need to understand some facets in the continuum of where we progress to. And today we move with more firm steps into the spiritual domain. And as I said yesterday, when we say spirituality, this is something which I would like to mention because yesterday I made some hard statements which would look hard for anybody who comes into an organization and says that, oh guys, these people are saying spirituality does not include puja part. So either people find comfort in the fact that, yeah, that is true, because I am believe only in spirituality, not the rituals or the religious part. And there'll be another set of people who find that, yeah, spirituality is the core, rest of it doesn't matter. We're not talking about that. We are talking about a deeper understanding of what spirituality is. Because when you understand spirituality in its highest dimensions, it automatically incorporates or includes the daily, transactional, real life of ours, this flesh and blood life which we live with things in the universe, things in the world around us. So it is not to negate puja, paddhati, practice, but to include that, but doing it with reason, doing it with holistic approach. That is what the emphasis here always is with the parampara, with Shivanetras as a parampara, as also Omnia Future as an organization, where we blend modern sciences and ancient wisdom. It includes spirituality, definitely the essence of spirituality, and spirituality for us includes puja, the prapancha of puja, the prapancha, the universe of rituals, all of that is included. But with knowledge, with shraddha, with bhakti, with jnana. Of course, without that, or it becomes very, very dogmatic. Science also is, seeped in dogmas. Some aspects of religion, etc., are also seeped in dogmas. We need to rise above that. And what's the medium? What's the vehicle for us? It becomes jnana. So, proceeding in the lines of our knowledge, we come back on the same steps. And now, today we are going to look at one aspect which may be new for some of you, but may be very well known to others. Let's look at what that is. It's called the subconscious. What indeed is the subconscious? Now, subconscious looks like a term where conscious seems to be something which you and I are doing at this point of time. So we are conscious, right? I hope everybody is conscious, right? Is there anybody who's not conscious? Then you're not here. So obviously we are all conscious. We're all here in the right here, right now reality. We're all here. And we're all transacting. You're hearing voices. You are in the presence of a certain environment within your own house or wherever your position. Everything working together. And then you are interacting with the environment as also with me. and the field of energy which is in which all of us are included. It's all happening when you're conscious. Now, there seems to be another state which is known now with the what should I say, with the fullness or the limitations, choose whatever you want to, of English as a language. It's been called subconscious. What is this subconscious? Because it becomes the foundation, and if you don't have an elementary knowledge of subconscious, we really will find it very difficult to progress, not just in this session, but every other session. The subconscious seems to be that factor which has an overbearing presence on what we see with the conscious. Now, what is the conscious comprising of? The conscious is what you and I are doing. What are we engaging with? You can see my body, you have a body, we have our minds, we have our emotions, we have our thoughts, we have all of that. So the entire mass of things which happens in the conscious regime is very well known to us. There is that which is real, true, and happening. But there seems to be another configuration or another confluence of energies. Again, if you say energies, waves, frequencies, etc., that mechanism which seems to be having a more controlling or a dominating effect, so much so, subconscious forms the body, mind, and emotions and thoughts, and subconscious also causes the operations within these. So it is both the formative and the causative. Now, these are terms which get associated with subconscious. Now, subconscious as a term itself is being discovered now in the most modern sciences. A reawakening has happened to the fact that there is more than the body, mind, emotions reality or the transactional reality which we have. And there's a lot of awareness now in science, in many of the modern sciences included, where they're contending, dealing with, engaging with, trying to harness this energy as well to see what can happen. While this has come to awareness recently through the world of science or the objective science, which we studied in the course of yesterday, this has always been in the know. This has always been in mankind's knowledge, especially in ancient scriptures or ancient wisdom, which is part of our heritage. In Sanatana, in Bharatiya Parampara, the knowledge of Vijnanamaya Kosha, Vijnana meaning that layer which is above the Anna, Prana, Mana, which is above the body, mind, emotions, and which seems to be a more, what do you mean by above? It's not one layer on top of another, like a sandwich. It's more like a construct where a more subtle energy is in play, and that subtle energy, which is called Vijnana or which is called subconscious, alluded to, referred to as subconscious using English language, seems to be playing a very powerful role in the course of lives. So let's just examine this a little before we make our movement further into the world of how babies and we can interact to create a new reality for ourselves. That is, as parents, as educators. Now, the only important thing which I would like to add to whatever I've said about Vijnana or subconscious is the fact that now many of you who have come for the first time will find it's definitely new, if not anything else. You can only imagine this or understand this energetically. What does that mean? There's no experience of the subconscious. You cannot feel it. You cannot touch it. You cannot do anything with it. So it exists as a controlling factor. And that is why it's called subconscious, because it's not within your conscious awareness. It's not within your conscious awareness and therefore not given to experience. So it's beyond or transcends, that's a better appreciation of the term, transcends the mind. And therefore, the subconscious is not given to mind-based experience, which is what we do with the conscious world. And this subconscious has a kind of, what does it comprise of? What's it made? How does it work? I'm putting it very simple because this is really elementary, which everybody needs to know. The subconscious and the mind. Now, both of them seem to be working in what we can very easily now make out with yesterday's background as patterns. What are these patterns? Patterns of waves and energies, all cymatic patterns. Now, when you begin to understand it slightly deeper, you will understand that these are algorithms, codes, formulas. These are the formulas or codes which actually run everything. So the content within the mind and within what the subconscious moves into becomes the knowledge of your life, knowledge of yourself, knowledge of the universe, highest, most powerful, subtle knowledge. And our rishis have divined it, and it's a part of accepted Sanatana existence living for millennia, thousands of years. So divined as waves, sounds, frequencies again, mantras, yantras, working phonetically, working visually, and just as a pointer, remember that mind also has pattern formations. So there are pattern formations in the subconscious, pattern formations in the mind as well. So that said, this is a grand visualization which we come to. Now, when you aggregate these patterns of energies, they will take shapes. The beautiful patterns which you saw yesterday, in the end, the last video, and those are real. Put sand, feed waves, feed frequencies, energies into it, the pattern changes automatically. Nobody does anything to the sand physically except the operations of waves and currents. You do that to water, you see this fountainous effect. You see water going back, coming down, creating waves, ripples, all patterns which are beautiful, which are symmetrical, which are organized. And that seems to be containing a brilliant code. Coded within those structures of shapes and patterns, which you see is huge amount of transactional information, basic information, foundational information, information about the world, information about ourselves, everything is there, and it operates as codes. It operates in a very, very subtle way. Put together, you can see it in forms which are now called as sacred geometry. Now, sacred geometry seems to be now having been lost to India, because if you mention the term mandalas and yantras, people hardly know about it. People today, hardly recognize this as ours. In fact, much of this has been appropriated and is now called as part of either Tibetan Buddhism or some other place. And people little realize that every festival of ours, every day of our lives, we've had patterns in our lives, starting with the rangolis which we put in front of our houses, the mandalas or the yantras which we'll draw in the event of a puja or homa, every one of that. So it's been not just a Devi Devata, but it's been huge constructs of energy in every facet, every format which you can imagine or understand. All of that has been a part of us. Being a part of us, how did we lose track? That's a different story for another day. But for the moment, we need to come back to understanding that these beautiful geometrical patterns, each of them, you will notice, will have a certain structure within that. Shapes are there. You'll see triangles, circles, squares, and interactions which are hidden within them or which are displayed but can come into our awareness as well. All of that, and these are called patterns from sacred geometry. Brahma Kshetra Ganita is one of the terms. Okay, so there's a lot of mathematics in this. There's a lot of energy play in this. So whether it's Sri Yantra, which you see on the left, or Vajra Yogini Yantra, many such yantras are there. Again, we've had, I don't know whether it's there right now on our website or not. What are mandalas? What are yantras? Those are separate sessions which we do. And apart from the fact that you can represent these as Devis, Devatas, or certain facets of higher energies, life itself can be displayed through sacred geometry. Now look at these patterns. The patterns which are there, now these are typically mind patterns or a mandala. Now the pattern on the left, which is captioned as dynamism, as you look at it, you'll feel vibrancy breaking out. That vibrancy can be in many formats. Now it can be a vibrant burst of energy leading you to action. A lot of sattvic rajas might come out. It might be anger of a pure tamasic kind, where you want to hit another person or whatever. The symmetry will undergo a change. Prosperity. Now, prosperity, becoming prosperous itself, gets enshrined within a structure like this. And look at the last one. The last one is where the baby is within that mandala structure. What is the baby doing there? As you can see, this is a confluence. It's the confluence of the gunas of the father and the gunas of the mother working together to create a chain of continuity which holds the baby and which is creating a confluence. This is real from the baby's perspective, real from the father's perspective. Dynamism real from the experiencer's perspective, and a person who's going to be at the receiving end, or the person who's going to receive this. Each of these can get displayed in life as energy. So these patterns are not just idle patterns or very esoteric where it's not meant for day-to-day life. Actually, it's very commonly applicable, very easily applicable in the course of anything in the course of life. Now, through cymatics, we are able to appreciate that shapes, patterns can also convey meaning, structure, form, and also the flow of energy which happens as a construct. If we understand this much, this becomes the ground for us to blend ancient wisdom with modern science, modern pre- and perinatal sciences included. Baby learning in the golden period. Now, this is another facet which I need to clarify for some people who may not be aware of the term golden period. Now, what is the golden period? Now, the golden period is that period in the course of our lives when the baby functions only with subconscious abilities. The baby or human life is only with subconscious facilities, 24/7. Every instant, every second, every hour of the day, the baby is in subconscious state. And this is typically the first 1,000-odd days of your life, starting from pregnancy, then infancy up to 2 years of age, and a few months before physical conception itself. Aggregate that period, it becomes what is called as golden period. So in golden period, the most prominent distinctive feature of this period is that the child or the baby functions fully in the subconscious realm. This might be news to some of you. Please hear me out. The child which you have as a 1-year-old, 6-month-old, and you're cuddling, playing with the child is turning, walking, crawling, all those. The child is not in the human realm. If at all, it's in a suprahuman realm. It's in a very different altered state. So is the case of a child within the womb. It doesn't have the normal human reading, writing facilities, but it has an empowered, a highly sophisticated or more subtle subconscious facilitation, which makes it even more powerful. So therefore, it will absorb sound, shapes, patterns, waves, frequency. So golden period is something which you should keep at the back of your mind as that marvelous period of human life, the first 1,000-odd days, where the baby is completely immersed in that, and being immersed in that, it has access to anything and everything virtually through sound, shapes, patterns, waves, frequencies. Once you see that, what are the primary resources for the baby? The baby uses resources. Primary resource will be the parents, because it will be continuously referencing to the parents. The parents existing and having a physical, beyond physical, genetic, beyond genetic, energetic, a complete engagement with the baby is a fact. So both father and mother, irrespective of the fact that the baby might be inside the womb of the mother, but the father will still be engaged with the baby through the course of pregnancy as well. And in the absence or in addition to, depending upon the situation, it will be relatives, others. Now, relatives, it could be grandfather, grandmother in our cultures, it could be others who are there in a joint family, or it could even be others, including maids, including caretakers, including, now you have situations where you leave children at 6 months age, 1 year age in a creche or play home or wherever you deem to put, fit the child because if you have other occupations to do, those people could become subconscious influencers for the child. Please remember that. That said, if all these are being used by the baby to learn, how does learning of a language happen inside a baby? Or how does learning language as a child happen? There will be a process. Please appreciate this. Okay, let me just break this down. Can you all see this? I guess you can all see this, right? Is this visible? Please give me a thumbs up. Yeah, what's this? A pencil, right? So what happens learning language in the context of a baby? First, the object comes into the baby's sight. So the baby usually will, if it's small enough, very small, it'll gaze at it. It'll just look at it. At a slightly older age, in the next few months, it'll stretch out, reach out. If it does get access, what will it do apart from seeing? It might even put it into its mouth, which happens so frequently. So all those done, before the next steps happen, the first thing which begins to happen is an association of a sound. So either the mother, father, or somebody, when they intend, it will become, after sight, sound will come. So the object will be there. Along with the object called pencil, it will become a sound pencil. And then there is a conversion which happens within the child. Watch this. This is something which we need to be careful about. Now what happens? The object comes into awareness, and then as the parents or other caregivers move in, combine the sound to represent that very object. And once that happens, the baby moves into the next phase when it begins to vocalize. Either repeat the word, or at some point of time, either in the baby language, or a full sentence or a full word construct will happen appropriately based on the age of the baby. And later on, invariably later on, there is a correlation with the script and shape that represent the sounds. So that script comes much later on. However, that correlation definitely happens when you talk of language combined, the instrumentality included of sound and shape. So including both, the script, language comes into the awareness of the baby. Now remember this, a baby is primed to learn. I mentioned 18 languages there. Okay, that's what science has discovered as of date. But actually, it's in the first 6 months, the baby has ability to learn even more, because it can distinguish between every sound of every language. It's got amazing abilities. So this baby, 30, 40 languages, whatever it might be. But then the real stuff is the transactional stuff, which it will come back to, or the frequencies it can pick up and interact in the course of its life. It's being groomed. It's being developed. Yeah, whatever number of languages. It needs to work into that reality of how to use its life, how to incorporate sight, sound, language, script, everything in the course of its life. That's the purpose of the baby's life. But then you should know how to make use of it. You remember P.V. Narasimha Rao? How many of you are from that generation? Do you at least know his name? Yeah. There are some people, all the old people in my generation will know who P.V. Narasimha Rao was. P.V. Narasimha Rao, by the way, was the Prime Minister of this country at some point of time. Now, P.V. Narasimha Rao was a person who knew about 14 languages, right? He knew 14 languages. But the remarkable thing about P.V. Narasimha Rao was he used to be silent most of the time. So he could remain silent in 14 languages. Amazing, right? So these are wonderful guys. So this, even the baby, like you don't know what language it's alluding to, what it's referring to. So understanding the play of sound, shapes, scripts. And another fact that by the age of 10, 12, the ability to pick up languages start receding. Why? The conscious mind has grown. Till that time, the conscious mind is growing from the age of 2.5, 3, till the age of 10, 11, 12, when puberty sets in. That is the period when the conscious mind grows. So it's a equation. As the conscious mind grows, the ability to learn languages declines. So one grows at the expense of the other. So this is again a fact of science, which is well recognized both in psychology, phonetics. Every part of modern science today recognizes this. This said, there's another important concept which we'll need to understand when we are understanding this in its holistic perspective. The baby does not see a pencil as the way you and I associate with the sound and make it a pencil for itself. The baby creates imagery. The baby, as also you and I, by the way, there is a fantastic way in which imagery works, meaning something with sound, something with picture. You begin to associate a sound and a mental picture or an image which you'll create. Let's do a small exercise. Okay? Instead of talking about it, I thought it's better if I give you an appreciation of what this is. How will we do this? I just want you to, I want you to look at something which I'm going to put up on the screen. Okay? It's going to be a few objects which are there. Now, there are just about six objects there. Okay? You will look at those objects and then I will move to the next screen. What does the next screen have? The next screen has 6 words there. Okay, 6 words there. Now, you need to just associate that picture and word. Just keep it with yourself. Okay, just keep it with yourself. If you have a pen and pencil, you can note down. If you don't have it, it doesn't matter. It's not too complicated. Just remember whatever comes to the top of your mind. Okay, it's going to work like this. We'll begin. Just be attentive. Just be on, although other people who are not there on screen, I can't even interact with them. Okay, so, but good wishes to you also. Just try this. It's going to be a very interesting thing. Have a look at this. Okay, there are 6 of these objects or 6 of these pictures, 3 in the first row, 3 in the second row. Associate them with these. 1 picture to 1 word. How many of you got it? Okay. What was the first word? Okay, I'm just going to unmute. Okay, no, I'm going to ask the question. It's going to be easier that way. How many associated mother with moon or tree? Just lift your hands. Okay. Okay, that's an overwhelming number of you, right? Okay. Father was a tree. Yeah, there are a lot of people who did father, tree. What was it with energy? Sun, right? So a lot of people put sun for energy. What did you associate that nail with? Pain, right? How did you make these associations? How did you make these associations? It's there. It's innate in you. A word is associated in the form of a picture in use in the subconscious realms. It's automatic. whether you call it subliminal, subconscious, those are terminologies, but at the end of it, it's there within me. So these are known as ideographs or ideograms, and these are extensively used in the world. Where you see a traffic signal, if the color is red, what do? You stop. You see a skull and two bones, what do? You stop. Yes, sacred, universally, I guess most of you would have picked up swastika with that, right? Now, what makes these images and these associations for us? Ideographs are very, very powerful communication media for us, even as adults. So what the baby would be doing with its super abilities will be many times what you and I are doing. I just wanted to give you an appreciation of that. The baby will be making mental images and associations as also grasping more than just the picture or the sound, including the energy structure within that, the formations within that, the play, the interactions of different possibilities and energies which can come, interact with that to reduce that, increase that, everything automatically is becoming a part of the baby's knowledge base. Its toolkit. It's going to be there with the baby. So this baby is getting this on an automated basis because of its abilities. It's creating more and more every instant and living its life as it progresses through the womb and through infancy and also through early childhood and later on in life. So as I said, ideographs of this kind, skull and bones, danger signal, red traffic signal, stop, all of these are part of the baby's repertoire. And what happens when a parent reads? So when a parent reads, there is a process again, because nothing happens automatically. We are getting into these sessions because there's a fineness or a refinement in our approach to this very subject, right? So when a parent reads, what exactly is happening? Let's look at that. So when a parent reads, the process starts with language. So language conversion is happening inside the parents. What we saw yesterday, in fact, yesterday we outlined this. There's a script, so that when the parent is reading a book or a newspaper or anything, script, mentally a sound is getting created, an idea, the ideograph, that's coming up into the mind, and there is an awareness and understanding which is coming and settling into the mind. Now it becomes awareness, it becomes knowledge, it becomes everything within the faculty called mind of the parent. But the parent is also continuously referencing another of the features which all of us have, which is called memory. So once this understanding comes, once this objectification, vocalization, script recognition, understanding, all of that happens, then there is a connection with memory. So what happens? Either as language, stored personal experiences, comparisons, analogies. So if I know it immediately and it's a part of my regular thing, it's very quickly accessed, because it's day to day. I know it. I've used it so many times, so quickly picked up from memory. But if it's not there, then to interact as a part of my memory setup, what will I do? I'll use comparisons, analogies, all of that, and put together the entire structure of this information in a very, very understandable, meaningful way for myself. This is what happens when a parent reads. So as this happens, look at what's happening. This is a very important one. Okay, just watch this. Now here, what is there on the left-hand side is the parent. Now I want you to watch this very carefully because I'm going to link up a few of these concepts. So please be there with me for the next few minutes with as much attention you can give. Now this picture tells you of the connectedness between the father or the parent and the baby. Now the father is on the left-hand side or the parent is on the left-hand side. And as you can see, this is not just the face or this is not just the brain. What is indicated there is the entire expanse of energies which are present both in the mind as well as the subconscious of the father. So therefore, it's beyond the physicality, beyond the realm of the mind itself into the subconscious as well. So the entire structure of energies of the father on one side, and the entire baby, and I've chosen this baby which is inside the womb, the baby inside the womb. The baby, because of its subconscious facilities, is able to interact and get anything and everything from the parent at that point of time. So what you see as these lines are actually waves and frequencies which are continuously passing between the father or the parent and the baby. So as this father, mother on one side and the baby on the other side, the energies begin to fuse. The baby, with its super abilities, does not just take two ideographs, picks up these geometrical patterns from the minds of the parents and from the memories of the parents, which is part of the subconscious again. So it accesses the subconscious of the parents and the minds of the parents. So whatever is happening in the minds of the parents, or in the feelings of the parents, or the thoughts of the parents, or the entire structure of parenting, including what they can consciously know and may not even be knowing, all of that the baby accesses continuously. And how does it do that? Putting those very images, pulling it into itself. All the codes, all the formula, all the transactional information, everything which needs to be known from the energetic perspective as waves, frequencies, much more, all of them put together. So all of that which we saw are now being drawn, put together by the baby in its own way. And it's making sense. It's making absolute use of all that which is going to happen with the parents. And this is an unavoidable reality for the baby. Mark my words, it's an unavoidable reality for the baby. The baby is highly primed. The baby is highly primed. With that kind of a fantastic energy operating, it's like a high power generator which is working, and it needs to be fed continuously. Otherwise, it will burst or explode, right? It cannot afford that. The baby has come here to orchestrate a life for itself. So for that intention to subserve, to be made fully, the baby will start looking into all the resources available, primarily the parents, looking into their minds, looking into their subconscious, and attaching itself to that and making its life design, its own life design, the basis in which it will live, the patterns which will be available to it, how it will translate that into operations, the operating mechanisms. Remember, subconscious is both the formative and the causative. It forms the body, mind, emotions. It also causes the operations within that. So both the things are going to happen, and the baby does this brilliantly. So the baby scores always. In the course of that golden period, there's not a single moment the baby does not have access to what the parents have. Everything of the parents is completely accessible to the baby. Completely accessible to the baby. In fact, if there are parents here who would like to know more in details about the subconscious transactions which happen in the course of prenatal life or early childhood or infancy, please join our other courses. You'll get a lot of information about how these things happen. I'm just giving you a gist of it so that we can make sense in our journey today and appreciate the faculties which the baby employs. So therefore, the mediating or the in-between mechanism, the medium becomes the subconscious. So memories referencing happens in the subconscious of the parent. The baby picks up its own patterns or picks up the patterns and makes it a part of its own subconscious. All sacred geometry, yantras, impressions, psychocosmograms, as we call them. Now, yantras and mandalas also have a sophisticated term called, in English, called psychocosmograms. Okay, so this sacred geometry, and this is a term which was popularized by many people. In fact, it was so much a part of our lineage till we abandoned it. In fact, I must recall a gentleman by the name of Professor S.K. Ramchandra Rao. S.K. Ramchandra Rao was a doyen. You know, he worked in NIMHANS. NIMHANS is the premier National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. So he used to be a part of that. And in all his writings, he popularized this term psychocosmogram. And then it's become part of the lexicon or the dictionary today as well in India. So most people, when they read about sacred patterns, yantras, mandalas, all of those which seem to be in the tantric frame actually have come from another authoritative source. But today the reference is as psychocosmograms. So all these subtle frequencies, waves, frequencies, patterns are there. And remember this, there's a seamless transition. The baby takes without full stops. It does not sift. It will pick up anything and everything. The last word is important, with the parent's intention or without the parent's intention, whether you like it or not. So you might have watched a TV show. You might have done something in anger. If you think that the baby doesn't get it, please take the thought off from your mind, because the baby will get it, whether you intend to pass it on to the baby or you don't intend to pass on. So much so, even when you're sleeping, your dreams are accessible to the baby. So just be aware of this. So this happens. And then, so what have we done till now? Learning, parental reading abilities, conversion into language, baby, how it picks that up from the parent. And now the important question, what does the baby really need to know? What does the baby really need to know? So if you take the course of your day-to-day life, everybody's life, okay, these are the normal things which will keep happening in the course of our lives, right? So we'll be using language, we'll be using medium, we'll be using print, we'll be using all of that, from where I take impressions. And those impressions could be of love or happiness or disturbance, hate, anger, whatever it might be. All of that will be. Now the baby is viewing this. While the parent is viewing this, what is the impact on the child? You might be looking at a good set of, things as a normal occurrence, which could even be a husband and wife fight, or disturbances at home, or disturbances in society, be it COVID, be it anything else, be it anything which is happening in the environment, good or bad. What is the impact on the child? Now, this is a good prelude to that. Who's Masaru Emoto, I think. How many of you know of Masaru Emoto's work? Just raise your hands. Okay, and let me go to the next screen. I don't see too many people here. Okay, I think the GPs should know, because we've used that liberally in the course of our sessions in the Golden Period Education Program. Now, Masaru Emoto was a Japanese. He's picked up a technique whereby he's photographing water. Water, not as water, but molecules of water. Now, he's picked up molecules of water and captured them with very powerful cameras at the molecular level. And he's done a deep study about it. His works are fairly well known. And people can understand certain things, that when we give so much of importance to us as human beings and our abilities, and we also know that I am made up of almost about 70-80% water, right? Whether in whatever form. Look at the impact of what water responds to given stimulus. So I am a human being made up of largely water, and water in turn reacts with the environment, and see what happens to water as it moves ahead. Now, this is fascinating. Why? I'll tell you. Yeah, because I'm seeing some comments which are coming up on chat. Let me tell you what it is. It's not just speaking. Every facet of everything which we engage with, there is a response, and there is a change in the geometrical pattern or the structure with which water engages with us. Okay. So it can be water from different cities, different places, including India, or including New Zealand, including Africa, wherever, samples of water, including different places in Japan, lakes, canals, etc. It could be at different times. It could be different situations. When it's polluted, when it's not polluted. And then at a higher level, he's looked at the response. What will happen if you speak to the water, and you speak to the water using certain words? So language. So you speak language sounds and the water responds. Not just that, you articulate it with what? Just words. How? Write it on a piece of paper, just stick it onto that glass of water and see what happens to the molecular structure. It changes dramatically. It changes dramatically. Have a look. Now, these are pictures, okay? Now, as you can see, the molecules of water are taking brilliant shapes, truly brilliant shapes. As you can see, this is on the top. What you're seeing, the first two are the molecule shapes resonating and becoming this shape when certain types of music are being played, like Mozart's symphony or John Lennon's music. So it's response to music. Then when you expose water to sounds or script which say peace or thank you are the two below that. Again, you come back to the top layer, you see love as the third on the top layer. A beautiful geometric pattern, symmetrical, nice to look at. It conveys love so firmly to us, even as human beings, when we see it with our naked eyes. And what happens to the same water when you use a term like, I will kill you? Look at the change in the molecular structure or the molecular image of that water. So you make me sick to thank you. See how the dramatic changes come about. On the left is you make me sick. So when we curse somebody, the image on the left hand side, and when you come to saying thank you, gratitude, that's the one on the right hand side. Similarly, this is even more astounding. Let me give you the background so that you can appreciate this. This was Fujiwara Dam. Now the water of that dam was pretty polluted. Now polluted by Japanese standards, not Indian standards. Indian standards, it would have been kind of really terrible. Okay, so polluted by Japanese standards, and picked up molecules, pictures of molecules from that. Then a Buddhist monk prays, offers prayers without water, and see what happens to the molecular structure after the prayers. This is it. On the left-hand side, you're seeing the same Fujiwara water before the prayer, polluted waters before the prayer, the polluted waters with prayers, acquiring a dramatically different structure. Dramatically different structure. I would like to just mention one fact to you. Look at our rivers. Look at Ganga. How much of India lives along Ganga? Close to 45-50% of India lives on Ganga. UP, Bihar, West Bengal, Rajasthan to an extent, Delhi, of course, Madhya Pradesh to some extent. The most populous states of India, that population of India survives because of one river. And it's flown since millennia. If memories can be there inside water, if images can be there inside water, and it can get stored, and it gets stored, and there's a response. That's why civilizations are built along rivers. So you have a reality that this brilliance has been there as a part of us. And even till now, forget the Swachh Bharat. Even before that, the Ganga was polluted, but hardly anybody as a human being died because of that polluted water. I know people who would, through the course of the last many decades, have had water from Ganga, both bathing, drinking, everything, despite the so-called polluted nature. There must be something different. The symmetry in it, the energy structures within that, will all be beckoning and telling us something very, very different. So the point which we are trying to make is, I am responding to the environment. Everything which is happening around me, I am responding. And the proof of what that is, if I am 80% water or 70% water, even as water, I'll be responding. Forget the other parameters of energy. And this is a visual proof for a lot of people. But this is a grand image. How beautiful they look, how symmetrical they look, how nice it is, how pleasing it is. And alters its structure dramatically with I will kill you. Look at that. Isn't it the same structure with intelligence of a superior kind, probably? And that structure is the one which makes our life. So, to end this narration of this Masaru Emoto's, we need to look at how all of this aggregates into what we now need to look at as a baby-parent relationship, where the engagement happens in the context of education, or the relationship between the father, mother, and the baby, leading to not just mere engagement, but a fruitful engagement which moves into the corridors or realities of educating or empowering a child. So with all that knowledge of language, sound, scripts, energies, waves, frequencies, etc., everything in background, let's now move into understanding how this actually can translate. The foundation is the golden period. You cannot avoid that. The baby is immersed in the subconscious. There's no getting away from that reality. So everything is accessible to the baby through the subconscious and the minds of the parents. How can parents make use of this knowledge to empower, educate a child inside the womb when it's in utero? And as an extension, I will mention the subsequent periods as also the preceding period. And learn, the baby must. The baby has no choice but to learn. So if you or we as parents, educators don't give it to the child has a survival need, a dire need. It will pick it up from somewhere or the other. This is the reality. If we don't give it, the baby will not sit quiet. The baby will access any resource, every resource, some resource, including neighbors, including caretakers, including people in the world, including some constellations or some cosmic forces somewhere else. The baby cannot afford an empty grinder, mixer, which is going to run, because that will cause a burnout. It will not work at that. It will fill that so that the churning happens. So that is a survival essential need for the baby, and the baby will do that. So that reality we cannot lose sight of. So once we keep that at the back of our mind, what does ancient wisdom tell us in this area? We all know of these cases, right? Prahalada, Abhimanyu. These are all famous stories, very easy stories. What are these stories? These are stories of where the babies have been there inside the womb and learned in the womb and demonstrated that in later lives. This is a fact which is known to us. These babies, both Abhimanyu as also Prahalada, I'm taking two, there are many more. The interesting question there is, this is what you should ask yourselves. Take Abhimanyu's case, which is more stark, because there was a tragic end. What happened in the context of Abhimanyu? Abhimanyu inside the womb learned. All of us know. Bharatiyas, we'll all raise our hands. Did Abhimanyu learn? Everybody knows this. So can babies learn inside the womb? Yes, of course. We all know Abhimanyu. Just think for a moment. Abhimanyu inside the womb learned about Chakravyuha, right? He learns about the Chakravyuha and implements it in subsequent life, but he's learned half of it, which is going into the Vyuha, not coming out of it, right? So this is again known to us. So what happens with that is one part of it, but the knowledge perspective, which when we are looking at it, there must have been scores of conversations Subhadra would have had either with Krishna or Arjuna, and millions of engagements she would have had in the course of pregnancy. Why is that? That particular conversation about Chakravyuha, which could have happened between either Krishna and Arjuna, one version, or between Arjuna and Subhadra, another version, whatever be the version, Abhimanyu was always there in the womb. Abhimanyu learns this while he's inside the womb. Abhimanyu was there in the womb, and she would have been talking about some other things in the course of her life as a princess in Dwarka. She would have been talking, listening, enjoying, having the day-to-day as also exceptional events over the period of pregnancy. Why is it that only this conversation came into the folds of Abhimanyu's awareness, knowledge, which became fully converted knowledge, which he could implement subsequently in the course of his life? We need to ponder for a moment and link back. I'm just going to take you into a small peep of what are the factors. It's not just one reason. It's a set of 8 factors which influence what a baby will pick up or not pick up. Now we are looking at the resources which we can get from scriptures, and here is the way to approach it. If you look at it from the perspective, 8 factors which can cause prenatal learning inside the womb. And these, let me just put it up on the screen so that it will be easier for you to just read the names. Shraddha, Prahelika, Avastha, Prakriya, Shakti, Vishaya, Purva Janma, and Kshetra. Now these are 8 factors which I've listed there. Okay. This is a study of a different kind. Anybody who wants more knowledge about this is there in either our courses which we have done, both the GPE course as well as Abhimanyu Effect I believe is a separate course which is available on our website, and that's a very long course by itself, okay, because it's not just a story. As also, I think the book Abhimanyu Effect, if any of you have accessed it, you'll find the details there as well. Now these 8 factors have their own play, but I'm going to pick on 2 of them and why ancient wisdom makes sense for us. The approach from ancient wisdom. The first is Prahelika. Prahelika is a puzzle or something which is quizzing, something which is intellectually absorbing, or something which attracts because of its very structure. पहेली बोलते हैं ना हम लोग हिंदी में, वही चीज. So that's the origin of that term. Prahelika is a structure which automatically entices, which pulls because of its structure, and it's got dynamic energies flowing within it. So what happens in the context of Prahelika is all of this. If you look at Abhimanyu's reality itself, this is the Chakravyuha formation. Now it has a lot of connotations, but for this, let's understand, it's showing an intricate design. There's a sense of rhythm. It's not disproportionate. There's a sense of rhythm. There's a symmetry available. As also, there's a sequencing in which the spirals are moving, one intertwining with the next. So there's a sequence, there's a rhythm, there's symmetry, it's intricate. So the moment there is something which is of this nature, there is something of this nature, automatically there is a facilitation of communication or transaction which can become part of the baby while inside the womb. Now in the context of Abhimanyu, just as an example again, the conversation was about Chakravyuha. The very fact that it was a vyuha, an intricate pattern, and it has many dimensions, inner circles, outer spiral, then significant points within that. So the more the conversation about this military formation happens, more intricate, more fascinating things come up. The intriguing aspects of this bind into a pattern and impinge upon the child's awareness. So it becomes part of child's subconscious. Similarly, Vishaya. Now, Vishaya is a little more intense. Why is it intense? Because look at it. Vishaya, which we know of, it can be either data or information, knowledge, etc., which we use loosely. But here, there's a specific context. This data can present itself in 2 formats. Now we are talking about prenatal communication, prenatal impinging into knowledge of a child. Remember that. What kind of things will become impinged on what structure will get impinged on the child's subconscious. Now, there are two types. Either it can be simple information or it can be knowledge. So, simple information is something which is there used by you and me. It can be references to objects, places, situations, events, happenings, emotions, every one of them. If you pick that up and engage with that, that is transactional information. When somebody comes and says, what happened with that auto driver, quickly your mind is processing that. Your mind is trying to make sense out of that, thinking about it, or taking an action about it, because if it's something which needs you to move, you will automatically begin to move. So whatever you need to do, thinking, actions, everything will start automatically with that information. So that information needs subsequent action, meaning some more processing which has to happen. And it has the potential to get into your memory. So repetitive patterns more easily become part of your memory. So that is the structure of information. There's another type of patterning which happens, which is called knowledge. Knowledge is full and complete. It's full and complete. It needs no further processing. Automatically, it will get into, because there is no processing, there's nothing to be done. The transfer is seamless. There is no barricade, no boundary. Automatically, it gets into the baby if it is there between the father and the mother. By definition, subtler knowledge, high power knowledge, high entropy knowledge is high entropy, high power because it is that. On the other side, information is lower entropy. It is lower entropy, needs more processing. Again, to come back to the example of Abhimanyu, the conversation which was happening there was not high entropy conversation. What was it about? It was about routine stuff. Routine meaning human stuff like war, military formation, right? Structures. So what happens there? Subhadra gets lulled into sleep. So as she gets lulled into sleep, there's a blank out, and thereafter nothing. There's no access to Abhimanyu for that. Okay? Because the conversation stops. If it was knowledge, the knowledge would have been there in Arjuna's mind, Arjuna's consciousness, Arjuna's awareness, Arjuna's being. The child would have picked it up completely. Right? It was not meant to be that. So look at it. Because it was transactional, because it was low entropy stuff, information which needed processing, it happened like that. So the point is, look at these two structures. These are giving you very good clues about how ancient wisdom can give you great insights into what kind of facilitation of learning, knowledge transfer, communication, language, every one of that between the child and parents. So we saw this Prahelika. Then I think we've discussed all of this information and knowledge. So Vishaya is the content which is there. The core content which is there, it can get into the category of either information or knowledge, and depending upon what it is. So knowledge is part of self, high entropy stuff. So yesterday there was a question, right? I think, who was it? I forget the name of the person, but when she asked, I stopped it there and then at that point of time, because I didn't want to get into soul at that point of time. The soul or the higher self which we allude to, that's the reality. So the knowledge associates with that. So you have options of either engaging with the child through information or engaging with the child through knowledge. So both become mechanisms or tools or knowledge bases with which you can engage with the child. So you stand empowered to the extent that you know that if it's knowledge that I'm giving to the child will pick it up. If you know it's information, you know that there is something else which needs to happen, and the child will probably create its own construct of that. But higher entropy knowledge, higher entropy, self-oriented knowledge, as also, it's not just knowledge about soul and superconsciousness and all of that. Many of the things which fall even within day-to-day domains could also be within the facet of knowledge. So remember, this becomes power for you because you know that there are some things which you consciously can give to the baby, but it becomes a part of the baby immediately, instantaneously, without any ado, without any further processing or need for anything else. Automatically it becomes a part of the baby. Okay, so this opportunity is also available to us. So this said, what does this knowledge now empower us towards? If the parent and the baby are there, and there's a learning which is happening all the while, can I somehow find ways and means of making this engagement between the father, mother, and the pair and the baby become more meaningful? Can it become, instead of something which happens by chance, something which happens by design? And the best empowerment which can happen to a baby is when you empower it truly, empower it holistically with all facets of learning. In fact, all of it, we focus it towards enhancing the learning power of the baby so that the baby can learn for its lifetime. We know that the reality in the future will change. So it's not just one type of learning. Make it a high entropy dynamic learning with power, which gets into the baby. So with that, the baby is able to pick up knowledge at random, at will, whenever it needs to, whenever it wants to. So these structures, how do we create them? How can we engage with them? That's what I'm going to deal with now. So this question, if we address this, can adults use their conscious mind? Now the parents are in the conscious mind reality. So they're like you and me, like all of us, working with our minds. So can we choose really what gets into the baby? What kind of transference will happen? And what are the essential patterns needed by the child? Remember this, education at every level needs different things. So we know a first standard child versus a 8th standard child need different levels of mathematics. Extending the same analogy, what the child inside the womb needs is a different kind of education, not just food and clothing. I will come to that. Not just food and milk and nutrition. And as it grows up between the ages of 1 and 3, it's not just food and clothing, it's much more. So essential patterns which are needed by the child will vary by the day, by the month, by the year, by the situation. So what are these essential patterns? How do we understand them? And this is again a good clue which you will get from the Puranas. What are the Puranas? Okay, we'll come to that. Now I'll come back to ancient wisdom in its own right. Now, if you get into where you can get these resources from, I'm again taking recourse to ancient wisdom. Especially, I'm going to mention a few literatures or few scriptures which are available to you. Now, remember, scriptures are highly dynamic. First definition, scriptures are high entropy, highly dynamic. They're actually holding different meanings for different readers, and the same reader reads it at a different time, it will make a different meaning to you altogether. So it's not static like you read Bhagavad Gita one verse once and for a lifetime you got the meaning of that. No, the same Bhagavad Gita will open up differently at different points of time to you and to different people differently. Keep that at the back of your mind, which is again a highly dynamic structure for that scripture. All scriptures are like that. So all scriptures have a language, but all languages or all scripts are not scriptures. So all books are not scriptures, but scriptures are those coded powerhouses which have to get unlocked. That a separate day, a separate study, you and I will have to find ourselves and become the tools to unlock scriptures. That's at the core. Here in the context of this empowered education or the transactions which can happen between a baby and the parents, I'm referencing the names of two scriptures to you. One called Garbha Upanishad by Sage Pipalada. This Upanishad is a powerhouse. Mind you, it's just one A4 size typed page. But what it has is the entire knowledge of creation, universe, human consciousness, awareness, creation of a baby, what steps are involved, how many things have to be aggregated together on a sequential basis, on an aggregated basis, when, what for, what happens inside the womb, day 1, day 3, day 5, first month, second month, 9 months, what is the purpose of all this, how it operates, final structures, how do they come up, the number of hairs on your body, the number of bones, etc. So it gets into enormous detailing. You will never get this kind of a structure in any other place. So there are many scriptures. I'm just mentioning the name of two of them. Similarly, Garuda Purana. Garuda Purana is another treasure house. All processes, life, death, everything beyond, ahead, all structures, all energetic waves, frequencies, characterizations, different layers of energies, how they operate, all of that, both in the context of life, death, rebirth, all of that, you will find it within Garuda Purana. Amazing. Amazing. So if you take a reference to that, that is knowledge base which has been in existence, and that is also high entropy. That is also giving you transactional information. That is the kind of engagement which will tell you how you can truly, both for transactional plus holistic, which includes the spiritual, how you will be able to create engagement patterns or empowerment through true education for a child to live in the real world, work, life, profession, spouse, marriage, events of life, all of that, plus the rest of it, which is the larger purpose which can get associated with human life itself. So it combines both, never to the exclusion of one. It includes day-to-day life as also holistic or spiritual life. So when you look at these scriptures and see what import they could have for us, they make a truly fascinating set of narrations. As a whole, Puranas. What do we know of Puranas? What do you think Puranas are? Anybody? Okay, just raise your hand. I'm going to unmute. Anybody who wants to. What are Puranas? My God, have I scared you? Have I dulled you? Have I put you to sleep?
No. Puranas are moral values or something equivalent to that, of which are duplicated in a form which the human brain can observe, or some kind of stories which will tell us how we have to live, and some guiding tools, something like that.
Guiding tools in the mind. Thank you, Sudhakarji. Anybody else? Anybody else wants to? What are Puranas? My God, the silence is chilling.
Puranas, um, in a story form, kind of program our subconscious mind through images and deities and symbols.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you. And reference points is what Yuktaji says. Through all of these are aspects of Puranas. But in its highest entropical sense, high entropy sense, what a Purana would be is, yes, there are shlokas in it, stories within it, narrations within it. But you know what it is? It's the compendium of the subconscious of human beings. Okay, subconscious as a concept, okay, that is enshrined, encoded within the Puranas. When it comes to mind, you'll find it in the Itihasas, which is Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are reference points in that sense. So each of them have their own connotations. I would like to invite you all to one particular scripture, which is called Skanda Mahapurana. How many of you have heard of Skanda Mahapurana or Skanda Puran? Anybody? I can see a few hands going up. Okay, yeah. Skanda Puran. Skanda Puran is really a huge compendium. Thousands of verses, lakhs of words, I guess. All of that. And there is one part of it which I would like you to pay attention to. I'm going to take you through some part of it. What does this Purana, what does this Purana speak for us? I'm going to take it as a story which has its roots in Skanda Purana. Now, all of you, I guess, would have seen serials on TV, or at least know of them, the Devonka Dev, Mahadev, many others, okay? So you'll find references or narrations which match with many of them, okay? That said, this is a time when there was great darkness in the universe. The entire world was submerged in darkness and dominated by an asura by the name of Tarakasura. So Tarakasura was that asura who had conquered all the three worlds and put Devas to shame. He was the almighty, he was the king, and he was the ruler. And he had subjugated everything, the Devas, Yakshas, Gandharvas, Nagas, every one of the energetic formats was subjugated and subdued by Tarakasura. How did he do this? This was courtesy of boon. And who is the giver of that boon? Lord Mahadev. Mahadev gives him a boon, and Tarakasura is a very clever person. Now he asks for immortality, and he knows that he cannot get immortality. So as a means of becoming immortal, what does he say? Let me be killed by your son, Shiva's son. So cause of death can only be Shiva's son. Wow. Who is Shiva? Shiva is a yogi. He's an ascetic. He's more like a mendicant, a mover, a kind of a person without clothes, living in with ghosts, goblins, all of that. So this person who's a tapasvi, how can he be, drawn into the world, or the transactional world, or the world of yours and mine, which looks like a complete misplacement for Shiva? He can never marry, he can never have a family. So therefore, with that awareness, with that knowledge, Tarakasura goes around and conquers the entire world. When he does that, the suras, the devatas, are completely subjugated, completely put down. There is no propitiation, there is no obeisance, there is no puja, there is no havan, everything, nothing can happen in the name of the devatas. So slowly Tarakasura extends everything, so that even the ahutis come in the name of Tarakasura. So you can't say Indraya Namaha or you can't say Agnaya Namaha. You have to say Tarakasuraya Namaha and give the oblations, even in a Homa's reality. So all of this happens. So this creates a helpless situation, but the devatas know what is the redemption. If Shiva marries, becomes a family household, and he marries and has a child, or marries or whatever and has a child, so they begin to engineer. So what do? They put in a lot of effort, and we know the story. I think this part I'll fast forward. What was it? It was the story of Sati, which you would have seen. What happens? He gets married to Sati. So the marriage kind of happens against the wishes of her father, Daksha. So Daksha is not happy with Sati marrying Shiva. Shiva is the so-called enemy of Daksha. And Daksha is very, very, very humiliating towards Shiva. Doesn't give a damn. Really looks down upon Shiva. So what happens? An event arises where Sati forces herself back into the household of the father when a major yajna is going on. Against the advice of Shiva, Sati goes there. Something untoward happens. She, in a fit of rage and grief, she kind of jumps into the fire and gets off, leaves her life. She dies. This causes a catastrophe. The Rudra in Shiva awakens and he's really violent. He comes out as Veerabhadra and comes into this yajna, vanquishes everything which is there, destroys everything, and beheads Daksha, removes the head of Daksha. Subsequently, it gets replaced by the head of a goat. That's another matter. But the thing is that Shiva's rage has no bounds as Veerabhadra. And Shiva subsequently is lost. He's just moving around in the world. What is he doing? Carrying this body, walking around everywhere. He's just in pain and grief, just howling, screaming, grieving all the while. This is not something which can continue for long. So the Srishti, the Niyamas, will come into play. And therefore, Lord Vishnu at some point of time uses the chakra, Sudarshana chakra, in a bid to get Shiva back into the normal fold. The body of Sati is cut into pieces and they fall in different parts. So those of you who are not aware of Shakti Pitas, there are some 50 odd Shakti Pitas across India, different parts of India and neighboring countries. You'll find them in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Afghanistan, in Nepal, of course, and other places, okay, Sri Lanka included. So this is the story of Sati, which we all know. Fast forward, what happens? Sati takes rebirth as Parvati. The plan has to continue. Someday this has to end. Tarakasura's domination has to end, right? Devatas will not give up. So what happens? They orchestrate Parvati's moves to get closer to Shiva. Who? The Devatas. Parvati does everything which is humanly possible. She is the daughter of Himavan. She is the daughter of a great set of people by themselves. But renouncing all the pleasures of life, she takes to sadhana, tapasya, invocation of Shiva day in, day out. Shiva tests her patience no end. But she doesn't give up. And the Devatas, in their own way, try to help. What do? They kind of try to engineer a situation where Kamadeva, who's Kamadeva? The Lord of Love, Cupid. So Kamadeva is put into the process, and what is he supposed to do? He's supposed to go and fire his arrows, the Bana, Kama Bana or the Cupid arrows, which are supposed to take a person out of the tapasvi's life or a mendicant's life and bring him into a love, Kama driven existence, which is the normal transactional life. But here, the moment he lets go of his arrow, Shiva notices, breaks his penance, but the third eye opens in anger and in fury. It focuses on to Kamadeva. Kamadeva is just burnt down instantaneously. So the object was to help Parvati, but Kamadeva is burned to ashes. This has a disastrous, in one sense, consequence. What happens? Rati Devi, who's the wife of Kamadeva, she is in her own pain. She tells Parvati, my husband lost life because you needed to reach Shiva. So is it fair that he lose life? This is not done. So she curses Parvati and she says, my curse be upon you, that you will never carry a child in your womb. Oh my God. This is catastrophe, because the entire structure was made towards getting Parvati and Shiva closer so that they can beget a child who will in turn kill Tarakasura. So those difficulties are overcome, but there's another aspect here. What happens? If the Devas propose, Mahadeva can dispose in another way. So just be aware, even in the Devata world, there are overriding realities. So childbearing is not just a one set of things which happen. There are multiple sets of things which have to confluence together. Eventually, Shiva and Parvati get together. That happens, and they get together. Parvati, elaborate marriage which you have seen in those serials. Parvati gets married and they unite together as a couple. That happens. Looks like happy augury. Devatas finally come to them and plead, please beget a son to end Tarakasura's tyranny. We need to get our lives back. That is when Parvati informs Shiva about the curse of Rati Devi. And she goes to Shiva and she says, I cannot carry a child in my womb. This is when Lord Shiva steps in with an amazing, why he is Mahadeva, why he is Paramashiva. He delivers a powerful message as Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is not just death, right? Shiva is not just death, he's the great transformation. So from death into recreation, that orchestration of the transformation is Rudra Shiva. So that Shiva tells Parvati, oh Parvati, parenting, motherhood is not just a physical thing. Carrying a child in the womb is one physical reality. But in true sense, what is it? It's the confluencing of energies to create a child. So it's much beyond the physicality. Look at it holistically. And this is a message for all the GPs and the truth sense of how you need to understand childbirth. There are many ways in which you can beget a child, not just physical union, by the way. So there are many of these which we have listed down in the part of our courses. That's for another day. I think the GPs have been exposed to that. GPs are golden period educators. Okay, they've been educated into that. So to come back, that powerful message that we can create beyond the physicality, Shiva and Parvati confluence together to put their energies together. So with the internal energy of Shiva and Shakti, a ball of energy gets created by them. And what kind of a ball must it be? What kind of energy must it be? The strongest confluence of energies in the whole universe would be there. Remember, it has to take on all the powers of all gods, all greatnesses, all levels of energies to make sure that the continuity of civilization, continuity of existence, time progresses with the end of Tarakasura. So this energy, first, who gets possession of it? Agni Deva gets possession of it. He gets possession, but he cannot hold the energy in his hands. It's too powerful. Agni himself is not able to hold this, right? Tarakasura simultaneously is trying to get access to that because he knows if he destroys that, the game is over. Agni Deva runs and requests whom? Bhumi Devi. Bhumi Devi, Mate, please hold this. I cannot hold this any further. Please hold it for me. So Prithvi Devi, Bhumi Devi makes her effort. She holds in her womb. She tries, but again, the energy is too powerful to be carried inside her womb. She cannot hold it. Somebody has to hold this. There is a womb. There is a dire need for a womb where this energy can develop. There is a mother needed to carry this mighty seed of energy. That's when the powerful Ganga steps in, the Praneshwari, Pranadevi. She comes in and she says, I shall carry him. So Ganga carries that energy in her womb and it develops there. Finally, Lord Kartikeya, Lord Subramanya, Kartikeya as we know him, is born. And he comes out as a baby on 6 lotus flowers, 6 parts of the same magnificent energy. They all come together in a grand confluence, which gets orchestrated by whom? By Kritika sisters. Kritika Nakshatra, those sisters. So that constellation comprises of 6 of them. So they come down, take care, take possession of the child, nurse him, groom him, do everything. All aspects of care are taken care of by these. So Kartikeya has amshas or elements of all. He's Agni Nandana, son of Agni. He's Gangeya, son of Ganga. Bhumiputra, son of Bhumi. Dharasuta, as he is called. So all these names are indicating different facets of energies of the same Kartikeya. He's all 3 plus Shiva, Parvati included. Of course, it's their primal energies. Look at the plight of Parvati. What's happened to Parvati in the meanwhile? She is Mahashakti, creating the power to redeem the world, but she's aware that she cannot carry her own baby in her womb. She can be the mother of the universe, but she can't have possession of her own child. What grief, what pain. It's unimaginable, unimaginable. That sadness, I can't even shudder to imagine, You can have a child, but you can't bear it in your own womb. And she cannot even see him. She comes back much later in life, in his Balyavastha, right? As a Kumara, as a grown child, he comes back to the family. So that pleasure of carrying in the womb, nursing, making things happen in the first few days, months, etc., it's all lost. So all the privileges which normal mothers have, the Mahashakti, Mahamate doesn't get it. In her grief, she approaches Shiva. What does Mahadeva say? He again reminds her, birthing and parenting is not just a physical act. You are connected to the child not only in the physical realm, That can be done by anybody. You know that, right? That is not who you are, Parvati. Remember one thing. The child is deeply connected to both of us, our energies. You should not be grieving about this. On the contrary, recall, know that this is an opportunity for you to tell and establish for the parents of the world. What should the parents of the world know? How should they engage with their babies? How should they communicate with their babies? How should they remain bonded with the child beyond the physical? The physical is easily accessible through the senses, but beyond the physical, what transference of energies need to take place to the child? Go beyond the physicality, Parvati. Cross over beyond the sensorial. That's a momentary pleasure. That happens. That's true with a feedback of happiness. That loop happens. But then, if you truly connect to the child, connect in the realms of spiritual oneness. Connect in the realm of emotions. Connect in the realm of minds and thoughts. What the true capabilities of the child is. What the baby needs to be nourished into. Look at this opportunity, Parvati, and move in those lines. And this has to come only from you, Jagat Mate. Because you are a mother, and this need of mother, this urge of a mother, you will be the best person to deliver, because there is a mother in everybody, including the man, including me. I too am grieving for my own child. You are the mother to every man and every woman. Go ahead and discharge your duty. Make this an opportunity and give an opportunity for the world to learn what parenting is and what needs to be given as nourishment, knowledge, enticements of all types which are required for a baby from the course of the womb through the course of life. So as Parvati is about to leave for a sadhana, Shiva gives her a doll made of clay by his own hands. So he picks up this doll and gives the clay doll. Go, take this, do a prana pratishtha, and this will be your baby, our baby. Go ahead, speak to this child, groom this child, convey everything that every mother and every father on this planet has to convey to every child who's born in this cosmos, in this plane of earth, and what types of energies are required by them. Do this so that this precious knowledge becomes a guidance for everyone for all times to come. Devi Parvati begins conversing with the child, grooms the child, brings it up so brilliantly, even though she was not physically connected to the child, beyond the physical, but into the spiritual, which is the more holistic part of it, which includes the physical. Therefore, the prana pratishtha with that clay doll takes care of that aspect as well. And Parvati sees him only in Balyavastha, as I mentioned, missing out the entire period of pregnancy, infancy, all of that missed out. She might have missed the physicality, but she gave what was truly needed as energies by the child. Only a mother and a father can fulfill this. Anybody who can stand in the position of mother, father can also fulfill this. Now that conversation which Parvati had with the baby is known as Garbha Gita. From Skanda Mahapurana, the roots. There are no written scripts of this. It has been passed on from generation to generation in certain spiritual lineages. And Shivanetra Parampara is one of such spiritual lineages. The gurus of our parampara have been handing this over religiously from one guru to the shishya in a guru shishya parampara. And this has been there available with us. So in its own right, Shivanetra Parampara has made available this to Omnio Future. That knowledge, simplified it, put it together so that that knowledge can be available to the world. But this knowledge by itself, the Garbha Gita, the womb the womb of the universe. Devi herself is the universal womb. And every instant, each and every one of us are there inside that womb. So we can go back to our scriptures and pick up the traces of knowledge, guidance, energetic manifestations, what we need to do as parents, how we can engage with the child, what stage, what activities, cultural, physical, social, spiritual, highest echelons of energy, how can I orchestrate that? That is the story of Garbha Gita. Okay, I think we are at 8:50. Let me check if there are any questions before we can close for the day, because yesterday I know I extended it significantly beyond this. Are there any thoughts or questions at this point of time? Because tomorrow we're going to get into more details of how we're going to engage with this blending, with this fusion, and also some aspects of what is available for parents to engage in this wonderful task, as also parents, educators, others in this wonderful task which can be there. Okay, Nutanma, can you please coordinate questions? Okay, we will be, one second, Ma. We'll be dealing with some aspects of Garbha Gita and what I mentioned about how these transmissions are done, how it happens, etc. in the course of the day tomorrow. So please wait for that in the continuum. Please be in that flow. So those questions, you can park them for tomorrow, if at all it's not addressed. But in the meanwhile, let's look at any other thoughts or questions which come up. Shivoham.
I have a question, Babaji.
You'll have to speak up, Ma, then only then we'll get to know. And one golden rule, a cheeky rule, if you're not on camera, we won't take your question, okay? No, that's a joke. Yeah, yeah,
Internet
please.
connection at my place is so unstable that if I turn on the camera every time, so the video is not completely audible to me. Babaji, the question that I have, can I ask my question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
My question is that yesterday you told that during your course of pregnancy, many people will advise you that you should not read Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita. You can read some other books. This is what happened to me. I got the advice from some of the people. Is it really that we have to read certain books and we do not have to read certain books?
Now, first and foremost, Ma, may I know your name?
My name is Iti Agnihotri. I'm from Jaipur.
Shivoham,
Shivoham.
Itiji. Now, first, let me ask you, who gave you this information? Can you point that source out?
It's just like some of the office colleagues, actually 2 of the office friends.
Okay. Okay, now this is a general thing. Why I ask that question is because first and foremost, that's the golden rule in the information age, right? Check the source, right? Authenticate before you forward. We don't do that. We just left, right, center, forward WhatsApp messages, but there's an expectation that we at least authenticate it before we feed the rest of the word. So if it is general sources, which includes Maharaj Google or anybody else, okay, if you get information either through WhatsApp forwards or strangers or people who are there as friends, colleagues, whatever it is, if you can't give it a respectable kind of a imagery wherein you buy the words of that person because you respect that person, don't buy it. Okay, so first and foremost, the source itself is what you need to look up, check up, authenticate. That said, suppose it had come from strangers, automatically you'll discard. Suppose it comes from somebody whom you really respect in your family. Okay, what should you do? That person has advised me like this. Now I'm going to layer or nuance this answer. depending upon who's giving the advice to you, if this is the kind of advice which comes to you and you automatically take it, not just this, anything else, please go ahead with that. Because much of the cultural things which we have within our fold as Bharatiyas are deeply rooted in the energies, and energies will have its own flow. So what is true for one family may not be true for another family. So don't mix it up. If it really appeals to you, take it and just follow that. Now, obviously, this falls in another category because you're posing this as a question, as an afterthought. So this is not in the question where you have taken to this and accepted this as the core. So it must have come from a source which may not be that unimpeachable. So if it's not that kind of a source, what should you do? The point is this: if you have no knowledge about it, don't own it. If you have the knowledge about it, find the ways and means for it. Any scripture, because the belief that reading Mahabharata, reading Bhagavad Gita, or listening to Gita will orchestrate a fear, and a fear that brothers will fight, cousins will fight, is one of the things which has become a cultural thing. The cure for that, which is lack of knowledge, the cure for that is knowledge. Just empower yourself with knowledge, get to the right source, take the right kind of advice, if at all you need advice. And if you are in a position to acquire knowledge independently, do that. If not, seek true knowledge. At higher echelons of knowledge, they cannot be wrong. You cannot have Sri Krishna. In fact, these are mistaken things. The Lord of the universe will never give a statement which is going to cause harm to anybody. You must have that faith and belief. If you do not have it, if you don't have that Shraddha, it becomes a debatable thing, because today Babaji will say, no, it is very sacred. Tomorrow another Babaji will say, no, it's not sacred. Do you want to get into an intellectual argument about it? No. The recourse to that is a deeper appreciation of knowledge of these. These are subtle frequencies. These are subtle frames of knowledge. So if you approach it from that perspective, you will automatically get empowered very differently. So at this point of time, Itiji, I can only say that based on where you are, first verify the source. Second, if it's a respectable source whom you respect, don't even ask questions, because this has become second nature for us to ask questions. बीमारी हो गई, ये डॉक्टर के पास जाएंगे, उनसे इलाज नहीं हुआ, दूसरे डॉक्टर के पास जाएंगे, दूसरे डॉक्टर ने ये बोला, कंपैरिजन करेंगे, फिर तीसरे डॉक्टर के पास जाएंगे, सेकंड ओपिनियन, थर्ड ओपिनियन, जिंदगी कटती जाती है ऐसे ही. Don't get into that road. Instead of that, develop that ability to find resources with whom you can stay put. And I'm making a very definitive statement. Find resources with whom you can stay put, because this is the age when pub hopping has gone, ashram hopping is the new norm. Okay, so people will switch gurus, will switch things, will get into different realities in search of things. So just be peaceful, just be aware that you have the abilities to work your own reality. This is not a question of yes and no. You need to find answers with empowerment. Different things will emerge from within you. The guru within you, agar wo jagrat hue, automatically you will get answers from within you. If not, till that time, find a guidance, find a guru, find a place where you can get authenticated knowledge from. Shivoham.
Shivoham Babaji, thank you. Thank you.
Babaji, Madhuri, we have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Shivoham Babaji.
Shivoham.
No, actually, yesterday you were saying about the prenatal and before mother getting into the what do you call it?
You're not audible, Madhuriji. I can't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
Yesterday you were saying, Babaji, like mother gets into depression, like prenatal and postnatal. In that, you said a girl is affected much less in the bar graph you have shown yesterday, and the boy is affected more. Is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, there are many reasons, but that's out of syllabus. Okay, that's out of syllabus for this course.
Okay.
We just took that example to show the impact of parents. And in the case of boys, it's really exaggerated. Okay, exaggerated meaning of a much higher dimension. So the depression, how it reduces engagement, which again remanifests at the age of 18 and subsequently in the course of their school life as well. That was the example meant for that.
Okay. Why I was asking this because I was one among them.
Yes, yes, I know this is the truth, but that becomes a separate discussion. Okay, so I don't want to get into it as a part of this course.
Okay. Okay, Babaji.
Shivoham,
Thank you.
Shivoham,
Shivoham.
Shivoham.
Harleen has a question, Babaji. Harleen, I'm just unmuting you. Go on.
Shivoham,
Shivoham Babaji.
Shivoham.
In today's lecture, you had mentioned that there's the connectedness of a father and the baby, saying that the child has continuous access to the subconscious and the conscious mind of the parents. So my question is that if the child is having a direct download of everything that's available in our minds, then where is the possibility that we can inculcate new things? Because if whatever mental blocks and all the negative things that we have in our mind is kind of directly getting downloaded, so it kind of makes us feel a little helpless, as in we can't do anything. It's so automatic.
Yeah, we'll deal with it differently, Harleen ji. The point is this: see, we believe that if I get information, I should immediately respond and act. This is one of the things which has happened in many facets of our life today. We believe that if I ask a question, I should have a right to get an answer, and if I don't get an answer, I should get upset about it. These are normal things. A child in school is told, "Arey, पूछ के क्यों नहीं आए? Teacher से पूछना था ना." So this is the standard reference which we have. Ask if you don't know, and you shall get an answer, and you should be satisfied with that. The reality here is manifold. It's different. Now, because these bits of data, information, knowledge is being made available, let's use the term appropriately. Information, data is being made available to the baby. Everything is accessible to the baby. For what purpose? To make its own templates of what it needs to use in life. If the baby starts using everything from the parents, it will be a clone of the parent. That is not the purpose of the universe. You don't need clones. In fact, duplication is abhorred. Mark my words, the universe, there is no duplication in the universe. There is nothing which is duplicated. Tell me what is the same thing which is there always? There is nothing. Nothing. One moment is not the same. One person is not the same. One walker is not the same as the other walker. You see the styles of walking? You see one eye of a person, one color viewing of one person is not the same as the color viewing of another person. The color is red. But the way you perceive red is very different from the way I perceive red. And every one of us will perceive the same red. 7 billion people will perceive the red differently. We think it's the same. It doesn't work. So what is there for the child to pick up is a structure of data and information. What parents can engage with, there are some clues which I mentioned today also. I'll refine that tomorrow as well. You can sift between knowledge and information which you can feed to the child. Okay. You can sift between what types of patterns and images can be made accessible to the child's faculties. You get into an empowered position to be in a position of power or choice, rather than saying that pata hi nahi kya ho raha hai, we don't know what's happening, everything is happening automatically, or everything happens beyond my control. No, on the contrary, you have the ability. Now, does that become infinite ability to create Sachin Tendulkars and Mozarts and all of that? That's not the purpose either. So there is a larger purpose behind it. Okay. So I'm nuancing my answer because we need to understand this holistically, because either the impression will be, "Arey, sab kuch download ho raha hai, to main kya karu?" Or shall I create a Superman? Or shall I create? No, it's neither of those extremes. You need to understand where you can intervene, to what extent you can intervene, what are things which are in my faculties, what are energies which are more subtle, some of them accessible to me, some of them may not be accessible to me. So how do I work with the basket of things? At least it puts you in a better position than where you are, which is from nowhere. It's not that reality. You should be working on your realities of your own empowerment. That's in a larger context. We'll come to that at some point of time. Sometime, and when we do that, you will be able to appreciate it better. Okay, thank you very much. Shivoham. Okay, Nutanma, please unmute the person who wants to ask the question, because otherwise you'll have these cross connections. Only that person you unmute them, because if we unmute everybody, then people having private conversations will also have a good time.
Rani ji has a question, Babaji. Rani ji, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Shivam Babaji.
Shivam.
Shivam. Actually, my name is Aranima. Rani's my nickname my mom gave to me. But Babaji, my question for you is this. What would your advice be for people in non-traditional pregnancies? So say that there is no father in the situation, which is in my case.
Advice as in what you need to do?
Yeah, because I'm just conscious of the fact that there isn't a traditional parental setup of mother and father.
Yeah, I understand. Are you, has the baby arrived in the world or is it in the womb?
I'm 8 months pregnant.
Okay.
She's in
There
the
are
womb.
plenty of things which can be done, Ma. What I would suggest is you get in touch with either Nutan Ma or Anitji, who are there on the screen. Anitji, please raise your hand. So Anitji, by the way, just as an introduction, he also functions as the person who drives most of the things for us in Omnia Future Academy. So please get in touch with him, or Nutan Ma is there. Get in touch with her. We'll give you access to some resources which could be there, as also what else could be done from the perspective of in case you need to engage more and more. There are no limits to this. Mark my words, there are no limits to this. You can really do a lot of stuff, and you can really engage with the baby in many ways, even as a single parent. So it cannot be that the baby will get denied because one of the parents is not there. In fact, you will notice that in the case of, for example, Prahalada's, it was to the exclusion of Hiranyakashipu when Indra tried to hijack or to kidnap the mother Kayadu. At that time, he got estranged. So that was one of the faculties. So he stayed in Narada's ashrama and whatever happened. So that's one reference. In today's day and world, how effective interventions can happen even by single parents is a reality. It can be done. So once you understand energetic structures at different levels, even that is possible at different levels, you can do that and you can engage with them. Arunamaji, there is plenty of engagement which is possible even for a single parent. Shivoham.
Shivam Babaji.
Anybody else with a question?
Yeah, I think that's good. If we can. Okay, so that's good for the day. And today, please don't blame me. I'm left you well in time for dinner. Okay, so it's not 9:30, it's just 9 o'clock. So we'll meet again tomorrow at 7 o'clock and continue with this narration on empowerment, how in utero communication, in utero reading, in utero communication, in utero empowerment, and in utero extending to both the sides before and after. Shivoham, let's do the prayers and over to you, Nutanji, after that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Shivoham.
Shivam Babaji, thank you so much. And thank you all of you for joining us today, especially those of you who are fasting for Hartali Tej. And all of you, please have a day full of celebrations tomorrow for Ganesh Chaturthi. Tomorrow again, being such an auspicious day, let's convene at 7 p.m. for the final day of Garbha Gita learning. Have a Shubh Ratri, Shivoham.